Listen to me carefully. There is a woman out there, a real woman, who looked at her husband every single day and smiled, served him food, watched him eat, and she knew what was in that food. She knew, and she said nothing. Every meal she cooked him, every single one, was seasoned with something no human being should ever touch: the water of the dead, water collected from corpses, from graves, from the darkest ritual you could ever imagine. And you want to know the craziest part? It worked. Her husband went from nothing, from a man who could barely pay rent, to one of the wealthiest men in the land. And all it took was one woman, one desperate choice, and one horrifying secret she carried to her grave. This is not a made-up story, my friends. This is a tale passed down by the elders, a warning dressed up as a folk tale. And by the end of this video, you understand exactly why our grandmothers told us never eat food from a stranger's kitchen. Ngozi and Emeka had been married for 4 years. 4 years of eating the same meal, thin pepper soup with barely any meat. 4 years of wearing the same clothes until they faded and tore. 4 years of sleeping on a mattress that had seen better days in a single room they rented for almost nothing. Emeka was not a bad man. He worked hard. Every morning before dawn, he would drag himself to the construction site, carry heavy blocks under the scorching sun, and come home in the evening with barely enough to feed them. He tried. He really tried. But trying was never enough. Ngozi watched her husband shrink with each passing month. Not physically, though he was getting thinner, but inside, his spirit was dying. He used to dream. He used to talk about owning a business, buying land, building a house with his own hands. Now, he came home, silent, sat in the corner, and stared at nothing. One day, he used to say. Now, he said nothing at all. And Ngozi, she felt something darker growing inside her. Not anger, not frustration, shame. Shame because her sisters had married wealthy men. Shame because at family gatherings, she was the one people pitied. The one whose children wore torn clothes, while her cousin's children wore new uniforms every term. Shame because she had promised her father on his deathbed that she would live well, that she would never struggle the way he did. And here she was, struggling. One evening, after Emeka fell asleep hungry because there was nothing to cook, Ngozi sat alone in the dark kitchen, crying. "What can I do?" she whispered to no one. "What am I willing to do?" She didn't know it yet, but the darkness was already listening. It started with a woman at the market. Ngozi had gone to sell the last of her husband's construction wages, a tiny amount, on food for the week. Cheap market, overcrowded, noisy. She was at one of the back stalls, haggling over tomatoes, when she noticed an old woman watching her. Not just watching, studying her, the way a doctor studies a patient. The woman was sitting behind a small table covered in strange items: dried herbs, animal bones, small bottles filled with liquids of different colors. A seller of spiritual items, the kind you see in the back corners of Nigerian markets. Ngozi almost walked past. She had no interest in such things. But the old woman spoke first. "You," she said, her voice like dry leaves rustling. "Come here." Ngozi stopped. Something in the woman's tone. It wasn't a request, it was a command. Against her better judgment, she walked closer. "I can see it on you," the old woman said, looking up with eyes that seemed to see straight through Ngozi's body and into her soul. Poverty, desperation, the kind of hunger that food can't feel. Ngozi swallowed hard. "I don't want anything from you, Mama." "I'm not selling," the old woman said. "I'm offering, for free." "Nothing in this world is free." The old woman smiled, a knowing, ancient smile. "You're right, nothing is free. But sometimes, the price is one you don't have to pay yourself." She reached beneath her table and pulled out a small clay bottle, sealed with wax and wrapped in dark cloth. The bottle was old, ancient looking, covered in symbols Ngozi couldn't read. "What is this?" Ngozi asked. "Water," the old woman said. "Special water. If you cook with this water, just a little, mixed into whatever you prepare for your husband, prosperity will follow him like a shadow. Within 1 moon, his life will change. Within 2 months, you won't recognize the man you married. Ngozi stared at the bottle. Her heart was beating fast, but she couldn't tell if it was fear or hope. What kind of water? She asked carefully. The old woman held her gaze. The kind that comes from where the dead rest. The market suddenly felt colder. Dead. What do you mean dead? Exactly what I said, my daughter. Water drawn from the place where bodies are washed before burial. Water that carries the spirits of the departed. Water that, when consumed, opens doors that are closed to ordinary people. Ngozi took a step back. That's juju. Dark juju. I can't. You can't what? The old woman interrupted, leaning forward. You can't feed your children. You can't clothe your husband. You can't look your father's spirit in the eye and tell him you kept your promise. The words hit like a slap. How do you know about my father? The old woman didn't answer. She simply held out the bottle. Take it, cook with it tonight, and watch what happens. Ngozi stared at the bottle for a long, silent moment. Then she reached out her hand and took it. That night, Ngozi stood alone in her tiny kitchen. The clay bottle sat on the counter, dark and heavy, with something she didn't want to think about. She had unwrapped it carefully, removed the wax seal, and poured a small amount into a bowl. The water was clear, completely normal looking. No smell, no color, nothing to suggest what it truly was. Water from where the dead rest. Her hands trembled as she lifted the bowl. This is wrong, she whispered. This is so wrong. She thought about putting it back, throwing it away, forgetting the whole thing. But then she heard Emeka cough from the other room. That dry, tired cough he'd developed from working in dusty conditions without proper protection. And she thought about the medicine they couldn't afford. The doctor's bills piling up, the landlord threatening to evict them next month. She thought about her father, his dying words. Live well, my daughter, live well. Ngozi poured the water into the pot. She cooked that night with shaking hands and a racing heart. A simple stew, tomatoes, peppers, a small piece of goat's meat she'd managed to buy. Nothing special, except for the water. When it was done, she served it to Emeka in his usual bowl. He sat down, said a quick prayer. Thank you, Lord, for this food, and began to eat. Ngozi watched him from across the small table, barely touching her own plate, watching his every bite, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. Emeka ate, cleaned his bowl, kissed her forehead, and went to bed. Maybe it's fake, Ngozi told herself that night as she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Maybe the old woman was a liar. Maybe I just wasted my hope on nothing. But the next morning, everything changed. Emeka was at the construction site when the site manager called him aside. I've been watching you, the manager said. You work harder than anyone here. I have a bigger project starting next week, a government contract. I need a foreman, someone I can trust. He offered Emeka the job on the spot. Double his current pay, with benefits. Emeka came home that evening and, for the first time in months, he smiled. A real smile. Ngozi, he said, grabbing her hands. Something is happening. I can feel it. Something is finally changing. Ngozi smiled back, but inside, her stomach churned, because she knew exactly what had changed, and she knew she wasn't going to stop. One meal became two. Two became a week. A week became a month. Every night, Ngozi cooked with water from the dead, and every night, Emeka's fortune grew. The foreman job led to his own small contracting business. The business grew. Orders poured in. Money that they'd never seen before started filling their pockets. They moved out of the rented room into a proper apartment. Then, within 6 months, bought a plot of land. Emeka hired workers. Business expanded. Neighbors began to talk. That Emeka, they said. Where did all this money come from? A man who was carrying blocks just last year? People whispered. Some said he was a thief. Others said he had connections. A rich uncle, a government contact. No one guessed the truth, because the truth was sitting in his kitchen, cooking his meals every night. But as the months passed, something began to happen to Ngozi. It started small. Dreams. Every night she dreamed of the dead. Faces she didn't know. Men, women, children, staring at her with hollow eyes, reaching for her. whispering things she couldn't understand. She would wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, the taste of something cold and metallic in her mouth. Then came the headaches, sharp, piercing pain that started behind her eyes and spread through her skull like fire. No amount of painkillers helped. Then the hands. One morning, she looked down at her hands while washing dishes and noticed they were shaking. Not from cold, not from fear. They were trembling constantly now, like something inside her was vibrating. She went to the doctor. They ran tests, found nothing wrong. "You're perfectly healthy, Mrs. Emeka," the doctor said, but Ngozi knew she wasn't. She went back to the market, looking for the old woman's stall. It wasn't there. She asked the other sellers, "The old woman? The one with the herbs and bottles? Where is she?" They looked at her strangely. "What old woman? No one has sat in that corner for years." Ngozi felt the ground shift beneath her feet. That night, she sat in the kitchen with a clay bottle in her hands. It was almost empty now. She'd been using it for months. She should stop. She knew she should stop. But they had just bought land. Emeka was talking about building a house. For the first time in their marriage, they were happy. Truly, genuinely happy. If she stopped cooking with the water, would the wealth disappear? Would everything they built crumble? Could she afford to find out? She looked at the bottle, then at the kitchen, then at the bedroom where her husband slept peacefully, dreaming of the future they were building together. She poured the last of the water into a bowl and saved it for tomorrow's meal. 2 weeks after she used the last of the water, the dreams got worse. Their faces weren't just watching anymore. They were speaking. And now she could understand them. "You used us," they said, their voices overlapping, layered, horrifying. "You drank from our washing. You fed us to the living. Now we are hungry." Ngozi woke up one night to find herself standing in the middle of the compound, barefoot, in her nightgown, staring at the grave of a neighbor who had died the previous year. She had no memory of walking there, sleepwalking. The doctor said it was stress, but Ngozi knew better. Then came the night the neighbor's child almost died. It was a small thing. Ngozi had cooked extra food and given some to the neighbor's family, as was custom. The neighbor's youngest daughter, just 4 years old, ate a bowl of the stew. Within an hour, the child was screaming, convulsing. Her eyes rolled back in her head. The family rushed her to the hospital. The doctor stabilized her, saved her life. But the tests showed something strange in her blood. Something the doctors couldn't identify. Something that looked like... They never finished the sentence. But Ngozi heard the whispers. Something spiritual. Something dark. That night, Ngozi collapsed. Not from physical illness, from guilt. She had almost killed an innocent child. A 4-year-old girl who had done nothing wrong. A girl who had simply eaten food from Ngozi's kitchen. Food that carried the curse of the dead. She lay on the floor of her kitchen, sobbing. Then Emeka found her. "Ngozi, what happened? Are you okay?" She looked up at him through tear-blurred eyes. And for the first time, she told him everything. The old woman, the bottle, the water, their dreams, the neighbor's child, all of it. Emeka listened in silence. His face went through every emotion: shock, disbelief, horror, anger, grief. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said something Ngozi never expected. "I know." Ngozi blinked. "What?" "I know, Ngozi. I've known for months." "How?" "Because I'm not blind. I've watched you change, watched you suffer, watched the darkness eating you from inside. I didn't know the details, but I knew something was very wrong, and I knew it had something to do with my success." "Then why didn't you say anything?" Emeka sat down beside her, taking her shaking hands in his. "Because I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid of losing what we built. Afraid of going back to nothing. The same fear that made you do it in the first place." They sat in silence, two people drowning in the same dark water. "What do we do now?" Ngozi whispered. They went back to the village, to the elders, to the old women who still knew the ancient ways, to the spiritual leaders who could see what ordinary people couldn't. An elder woman named Adana examined Ngozi and confirmed what she already suspected. "The curse is inside you," Adana said, "feeding you, The water of the dead doesn't just give wealth, it bonds itself to the person who uses it. The longer you use it, the deeper the bond. Eventually, it will consume you completely. Can it be broken? Emeka asked, holding his wife's hand tightly. Yes, but there is a price. What price? Ngozi asked. Everything the water gave you must be returned. The wealth, the land, the business, all of it must go. Given away, donated, destroyed. Every single thing that was built on the back of that course must be surrendered. Ngozi and Emeka looked at each other. Everything they had worked for, everything they had built, everything they had dreamed about, gone. And if we don't, Emeka asked. Adana's face was grave. Then Ngozi will die. Not tomorrow, not next week, but soon. The dead always collect what they are owed. That night, they made their decision together. The next week, they gave away everything. The land donated to the village school. The business handed over to Emeka's younger brother with a prayer. The money in the account given to the orphanage, the church, the families in need. Piece by piece, they stripped away everything the dead water had built. It hurt. God, it hurt. But with each thing they let go, Ngozi felt something lift from her shoulders. Something heavy and dark and suffocating. The headache stopped. The trembling stopped. The dreams stopped. On the night they surrendered the last of their possessions, Adana performed the final ritual. Fire, prayers, herbs, ancient words spoken into the night air. When it was over, Ngozi felt clean. For the first time in months, she felt truly, completely clean. So, my friends, this is the story of Ngozi and the water of the dead. A story about desperation, about the lengths we go to when we feel the world has failed us, about the invisible prices we pay for shortcuts we take. Ngozi didn't start as a bad person. She started as a woman who was tired. Tired of struggling. Tired of failing. Tired of watching others thrive while she suffered. And in that exhaustion, she made a choice that nearly destroyed her and almost took an innocent child's life. But here's what I want you to take away from this story. The wealth was never real. Not truly. Anything built on darkness, on sacrifice, on curses, on other people's suffering will always crumble. It is not sustainable. It is not lasting. It is borrowed time. And the dead always come to collect. Now, I want to hear from you. What did this story make you feel? Have you ever been so desperate that you considered doing something you knew was wrong? Where is the line between determination and destruction? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. No judgment here, just honest conversation. And if this story shook you, if it made you think about the choices you are making and the prices you might be paying without knowing it, then hit that subscribe button right now. Every week, I bring you stories like this, African folk tales that aren't just entertainment. They are warnings, they are mirrors, they are lessons our ancestors left behind for us to find. So subscribe, turn on your notifications, share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Because sometimes the greatest wealth isn't what's in your pocket, it's the peace in your soul. Until next time, remember, not every door that opens is meant to be walked through, and not every gift is meant to be received. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.